G'day and welcome to Mark and Sam After Work. Today I want to do a quick update on our 22 Magnum ELR project. So basically it's a Rim Fire ELR project and I've settled on at the moment what I'm trying to make happen is the 22 Magnum. Lots of other details to go with that, they're in previous videos, but this is, like I said, just a little update to go with it. What it is, for those who don't realise, it's now a custom built rifle. It started as a Lithgow, which we used because of basically their screw-in tenon and the way the bolt works and things. Video on that, like I said, but we've used the Lithgow, done a custom barrel for it so we could get a decent twist, so we could run a better projectile in the round. And then we've set it up very thoroughly, probably overdone, but really trying to make sure there's no excuses for how this thing performs. I want it to perform well in a ELR / tactical, whatever you want to call it, process to try and shoot 600, 800, even 1,000 yards in a rimfire with some reasonable consistency. So in previous testing and things I've done, found both the barrel twist on a normal 22 Magnum and how the ammo is set up for a 22 Magnum wasn't really suited to that, so I'm in the world of changing that. So we've got a 1/8 24-inch barrel. It's a swan barrel we've got in here so we've got decent twist and a good barrel in this thing. And then we've gone through with ammo testing, both before we started this rifle and now we've gone with ammo testing and trying to step up with a decent little projectile. And what I'm using for that at the moment, which seems to be working pretty well, is the 22 cal in the burger, the 52 grain in the burger. Decent little projectile. We're getting decent speeds, and I suppose what I've been through, I went through the last video was explaining of all the different variances or variables in the ammo. And what I've actually found is, yes, you can knock yourself out with measuring everything. You pull the bullets to pieces and even up the powder, and so pull the rounds to pieces, even up the powder, sort the brass into same weight, sort the rim thickness into the same sizes, put in projectiles that are of a higher quality. You can do all that sort of stuff, and you really could knock yourself out with the details and spending hours and hours doing this. For me, I wanted to find the least path of resistance, so I want to find where I get good accuracy, but I don't want to have to overwork it. I don't want to spend an hour building a projectile and do that 1,000 times. I don't want to do that. So what I've settled on at this moment, which is working pretty well, we've got a pretty good grip for it and we're ready for when things dry out and we can go and do some stretching it out sort of stuff, but that's actually running the 50 grain federal ammunition. And all I'm doing at the moment is simply not sorting them at all. I've been pulling the projectile out and leaving them, not measuring the powder at all, not pulling, not doing the extra fuss, just put the projectile back in, and I got reasonable consistency. Now I did do the other things. I did do the other sorting and go to the nth level of sorting further and further and further, and I did see some tiny margins of improvements. Now I'll just grab this little groups for you. Okay, here on this little board is our last lot of groups. And there was a bit of ammo testing. This stuff here we started with, this little group down here, see, in two positions for whatever reason that was, but this was just the 50 grain ammo just crimped. This one up here was the 50 grain ammo with the 52 grain bullet changed into it and nothing else, so not too bad, but still opened up a little bit. Over here you have to ignore 3 of these because they were actually sorting something else out and they were shooting high, so 3 of those, but that closest one in that little group there was actually the ammo that had everything done to it. This is all 100 yards, they're all running around the 2100 feet per second, and that was pretty nice. That's sort of coming down to a 1/2 inch group in the middle there with one, I'm not going to call it a flyer, one that's larger from there, so it really turns it into just on 1 inch, but pretty good. Down here, that is 6 shots. One was actually finding it and I had to move a little tiny bit, but let's do it, even if we go with 6, you'll see the gang, there's a little gang there that's down to less than 1/2 inch. Now that stuff there is what I've got sitting here. That stuff, I'll go with this stuff over here, was another one of the older rounds I just tested to see how it actually shot. There's a couple of different groups I shot in there, not too bad, but over 1 inch. But that fine group there is actually what I'm using. Put this down. That is this ammo, which is simply pulling the projectile out and putting in a new projectile setting it down to magazine depth so it could magazine load, and then running it, and then crimping it. Crimping it twice, crimping it once, turning it 45 and crimping it again. So because it's a little segmented crimp, it ends up with 4 corners, so I'm squishing those corners with the second crimp. So a pretty simple process to build that ammo. And what I saw is actually on the chronograph, and I suppose there's some grey areas I got into and a couple of grey areas I go into. One was the chronograph, the lab radar didn't like this ammo for some reason or other. Now, how's that possible? I don't know. I sort of get used to that thing. They are a bit quirky. They need to be used in a particular way, and you've got to find that out. It worked so well when I was testing the other ammo, and I got really consistent readings. This time, I really struggled to make it work. I only got like half a dozen readings out of shooting 25 rounds. They still told me roughly what I wanted to see, and everything was around 2100 with only a 30 feet per second spread on it, but it didn't read most of them. So it was being a bit of a bit temperamental, and maybe I've got to do something different, and maybe I should start looking at something like the magneto speed or something like that to test those, to just test it. But in truth, I'm not a chrono guy. I much prefer to look at the groups and see how it shoots, so I'm really looking forward to getting to the long range stuff where I can then see the impacts in the dry weather, see the impacts, and then we can see our high ones, see our low ones, hopefully have them largely on target, 24-inch plate at 800 yards, be hitting the target all the time. Then that's really what this goal is, and hopefully this ammo, which will magazine load, it's nice and safe, it's running around 2100 feet per second, it's not over pressure, everything's working really well. So that was the first bit. The chronograph was being a bit of a dick, but anyway, that's where that was. The other thing is the Lithgow. For the advantages, I used it, having the thread on the back here and having the 3 lugs on the bolt, which makes it nice and strong. It did have some feeding issues which were pretty awkward to deal with. It had a lot of messing with magazines. I got a 10 round CZ magazine, as I'd been advised that would work. No, that didn't work at all, won't fit in the Lithgow at all, the 10 round. So that was quite complicated in making all that work. Quite a messy and complicated process. I read that there are issues with some of the Lithgow's feeding. I don't know, maybe that's something Lithgow could look at. Getting a 10 round magazine would be a good idea. Sorting out those feeding issues for people would be a good idea, making them work. It is a little bit the nature of a rimmed cartridge. It does make things a little more awkward, but I found with a bit of grinding and touching up and sorting with that magazine, I got it to work well. So I was happy with it. It's able to get there, but I got it work well. Well, that was until the last moment. There's one other thing I did. One of the, and I suppose a caution, or a cautionary tale to go with this little process I'm on. I've mentioned about pulling projectiles out and putting other projectiles in, which is something you should do with caution in any sense. If you're going to try this, do it with caution. Do understand there is things that can go wrong if you get your combination wrong. One of the ones I tested earlier on, which I mentioned previously, was I took a 30 grain VMAX load round from Hornady, pulled that out, and I put the 40 grain projectile in that. And it worked, no extra pressure or any of those bits and pieces, none whatsoever. I'd loaded in, loaded out, it worked. In all forms, it worked. So that was pretty good. I wondered how that would go. When I loaded up this lot, I thought I'll just load up a couple of rounds of a different 30 grain cartridge, which was, and I've forgotten exactly which brand it was, I think it was Remington. But I tried, okay, that was full with powder, but okay, I went with a test beyond what I should have done. What I did then was I put in one of the 40 grain projectiles into that and tried to compress it a little bit to get it into the magazine. I couldn't get it in the magazine, but I thought, okay, well, let's just test that and see what that does. Let's just test it. Well, it didn't behave well at all. I'll put an image on here, but it burst the case. Now, in this case, it just burst the case. So I was being, and my cautionary tale goes with, I was doing all the right things. I put my safety glasses on. I didn't have my face down near the firearm. I put the round in and I carefully pulled the trigger. Now it's built strong to make sure that I was covered things. In a lesser one, that might have caused another issue. Even though it's low energy, it burst this case, and my modified magazine now looks like that. It blew the magazine out of it. It destroyed it. So it's something that, you know, I've no doubt there's people who are watching what I'm doing and saying, messing with the rounds and trying different things. We're going, oh goodness, what's he going to do here? And to a degree, yes, they're right. That's something you should be very cautionary with. You shouldn't just do it and expect it's going to work, and never ever listen to what someone like me did and then just copy it. Always presume that there is something missing in that information. Always presume that yours might be different, that you haven't got everything covered. You have to test into it carefully. So, and what the details were here is that there is some peculiar things about the Hornady powder that let it work, but it surprised me. I found it worked, and it worked really easily. So I tried to sort of duplicate that in a different place, and it didn't work at all. So it means be wary of that sort of stuff. Don't just do stuff because I've said it works or because anyone said it works. If you're doing something and you're unclear or unsure, then you test with all the safety in the world. And that includes, if you're really not certain, being behind something and with a long piece of string, so you're completely away from your firearm. It also means that when you do it, you're prepared to sacrifice whatever it is. For me, that just cost me that magazine, and I had modified it a fair bit, so there's a bit of work in putting back to that place. I've got more coming. I also modified that 10 round CZ trying to make it work. It won't work. Don't bother with trying to do that. So I'll get some more of these and make the 5 round work. I would really like to see Lithgow step up and do a 10 round for them. It really would suit the little thing here. But I suppose there's a few things I would like to see, and I suppose that's where I'll end up with this little conversation. So I suppose at this moment, we're at the place where we have to wait now until we've got wet ground, so very, very hard to see little flow projectiles out at long range. So we really have to wait to do that. Otherwise, we know from previous experience you can be beating your head against the wall to try and find those finer details. So we're going to wait until we get dry ground to be able to do that. What I can tell you right at the moment is this looks like it's really in the process of it's going to be a success. We're really going to make this happen. There's a few dotting the I's and crossing the T's to make it happen, but from what I'm seeing, with a reasonable extreme spread, with reasonable grouping, with a quality little bullet, I think we're going to make it work. Now, we could go better. I'm hoping that just pulling the projectile out, putting a different one in, crimping it properly is all I need to do without any further sorting. But yes, there is going to be advantages out of spending more time. So if it's the type of thing you really want to do and you've got the time, whether you're in the cold lands where you spend a whole heap of time underground keeping or out of the elements and keeping warm, then probably perfect to go through and do all that extra sorting. If it's just something you like to do, that's how you relax, you want to go and do the extra stuff, I think there are going to be some small gains. I'm hoping to not have to put all that effort in. I'm hoping this is going to work, and from what I've seen at the moment, it's looking that way. But we'll see. What I would like to see, and I suppose my presumptions are that, one thing people ask, why are 22 Magnums like this? And I don't really know. I don't get to speak to any of the major manufacturers that do this sort of stuff. But and another interesting fact or thing that I've noticed is that if you look at it's a lot newer, but the likes of the 17 HMR, well, although it is simply a 22 Magnum neck down, it actually is completely modernized because it runs a little VLD projectile. It has a fast twist barrel, so all the manufacturers build them either 1 and 7 or 1 and 8 twist barrels, so they've already got a good barrel to suit inside there. They're a little tiny bullet, so really not suited to the ELR sort of stuff because they're 17, they're so small, ridiculously hard to see out at any range, that sort of stuff, but they are far better set up in everything else. My logic of why that is people haven't changed. People are set in their ways. People have the rifles already, so they build ammunition to suit those rifles of what suited things for just doing the hunting job, and that's all 50 years ago. So they do the same. They've already got the rounds, so they build the ammunition. We've got the firearm, so they build the ammunition to shoot that firearm. And because that's the ammunition that's on the shelf, that's what the manufacturers that build the rifles now do. They build that stuff there. So it's a cat chasing its tail. It does the same thing because it does the same thing. And I would like to see them change that. I think, and I obviously have to prove what I'm doing here, but I see no reason why not to step that up. There are some great little VLD projectiles in hunting and all that type of thing as well. The cartridge is capable of doing this side of things. Whether they, and from what I saw, is a little bit more variance in the powder loading than is ideal, but it's not terrible. But that's another place that can be stepped up and without too much trouble. In the automated world, to make that more accurate isn't going to be super complicated to set up for them. Obviously it's a cost-based thing, but I think if we started down the road where the manufacturers or a firearm manufacturer starts building a rifle in a 22 Magnum with the likes of a 1-in-8 twist, then it's still going to have no trouble shooting the lighter projectiles, but it gives the option of the heavier projectiles, and then hopefully the manufacturers, and likes of Hornady are definitely the guys to do it, to put together one of their projectiles with the round they already do, and we're away and racing. It is possible, it does fit, it is able to happen, so it's something I'd like to see. What the power I have is nothing, but until one of them starts it, then that cat is still going to start chasing its tail. We just need another tail for it to chase, and then there'll be another path down there. And I think the 22 Magnum has some real, it's really nice little round to use. It does things, it's cheap to do, it's just rimfire, ammunition, that sort of stuff, and then there can be a path down that road. So we'll see. That's not for me to really make any suggestions, it's just my feelings on why they're in that situation, and it's not that big a deal to change over to get to a different situation. But for me, for the moment, to load, to put good projectiles in, turns into where I get the very good. I really do like the burgers. I'm hoping they're just going to work nicely on that without having to mess with them. I should say I did do the messing with and went through and I raised the powder level a little tiny bit, but evened them all off to within 0.02 of a grain difference. So really, really consistent, like on that group there that I showed you. And I also got consistency in the brass to within the same sort of place, so that was down to, I think it was 0.05 of a grain difference between, or 0.06 I think was the cutoff point, but I got it down to where that was super consistent. Everything was really, really nice in what I had, and once again the chronograph being troublesome didn't help me with actually being able to prove much in it, but in the groups I saw, I didn't see enough difference from just these ones here that just had reloaded projectiles. So anyway, I'm waiting. That's what I can tell you right now. I think it's still going to work. It's still at the level that people can play that sort of stuff. I really would like to go out and show you a group, but like I said, I know I'm chasing my tail at this moment, so I don't want to be a cat chasing my tail, so I'll leave that alone until I've got dry ground to go and do that with. But that's our project, that's where it is. I still have to test whether the muzzle brake is worth anything here or not. It's worth it in the way of pretending to be a big dog when it's just a little 22 Magnum, but I think I'll actually find a little bit of accuracy in it, and not about the brake effect, but about the thing attached to the end of the barrel. But we'll see. And as said, maybe it's to go to the likes of the magneto speed for a chronograph to get consistency, and maybe I'm just holding my mouth wrong, and I'll get the lab radar working with those projectiles so I can test that. I know that you guys want to know. For me, like I said, that group, if I can at 800 yards hit the plate 10 times out of 10 on a 24-inch plate, then that would be bad shooting for if that's all you could do, the best you could do with a centerfire. But if I can get these consistently on there in that pattern, then that's going to be pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. And hopefully it's even better than that. Hopefully it's in a 10-inch group out there type thing, but we'll see. Looking forward to that, but that's a couple of months away, or a few months away. Anyway, that's what I can tell you. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let us know any questions or thoughts or otherwise to go with it. And yeah, we'll catch you next time.